It all began in 1948, but the explosion still echoes today. When the State of Israel was declared on May 14, fireworks went off in Tel Aviv and a blue and white flag rose in celebration. But for the people of Palestine, it was not a birth, it was an erasure. And it wasn't just a war, it was the beginning of a nightmare they've never woken up from. What followed wasn't simply a territorial battle, it was a war that cracked the Middle East in half, destroyed generations of lives, and laid the foundation for every future airstrike, every demolished home, every checkpoint, every screaming mother, and every protest sign we see to this day. Because this isn't history, this is still happening. The land once known simply as Palestine was, for centuries, home to Jews, Christians, and Muslims who coexisted under different rulers. Under the Ottoman Empire, it was a patchwork of people and faiths. But when the empire collapsed after World War I, European powers moved in. The British took control of Palestine in 1917 and brought with them a promise, a letter, the Balfour Declaration. In it, the British committed to supporting a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. But they had already made conflicting promises to the Arabs for the same land. It was the spark to a powder keg. As European Jews fled the horrors of the Holocaust and rising anti-Semitism, they began migrating to Palestine in huge numbers. Zionist militias formed, Arab resistance exploded, and the British couldn't control it. The situation became so volatile that by 1947 the United Nations stepped in with a solution: split the land into two states, one Jewish, one Arab. The Jews accepted it, the Palestinians did not. To them, this wasn't a compromise, it was a robbery in plain daylight. Then, the final straw. May 14, 1948, Israel declared independence. Within hours, armies from Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq launched an invasion. What followed was the first Arab-Israeli war, but it was also something far darker. It was the Nakba, the catastrophe for Palestinians. Entire villages were wiped off the map. Deir Yassin al-Domayema, families slaughtered or forced to flee. Over 750,000 Palestinians became refugees almost overnight. They left behind keys to homes they'd never see again. Israel, meanwhile, took 78% of historic Palestine, far more than the original UN partition plan. The war ended in 1949 with Israel victorious, the Arab states humiliated, and the Palestinians abandoned. But the war never truly ended, it simply froze in time, waiting to explode again. Those Palestinian refugees were supposed to go home. The United Nations passed Resolution 194 demanding their right of return, but Israel refused. They argued that absorbing millions of Palestinians would destroy the Jewish character of the new state. So the refugees stayed in camps in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Gaza. Generation after generation, no citizenship, no rights, no home, just memories and scars. As the years passed, more wars followed. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel launched a surprise strike and captured even more territory: East Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. The Palestinian dream of a state faded further into dust. But something shifted. The Palestinians, realizing the Arab states had failed them, decided to fight for themselves. The PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, rose to prominence, but the world labeled them terrorists, hijackings, bombings, assassinations. Israel retaliated with assassinations of their own, raids, and full-scale invasions. Lebanon burned, refugee camps turned into battle zones. And then came a new wave of resistance. In 1987, the First Intifada erupted. It wasn't soldiers with rifles, it was kids with rocks. Israel responded with bullets, beatings, and curfews. The world watched in shock. The narrative began to change. Palestinians weren't just faceless enemies anymore. They were humans, resisting occupation. Peace seemed possible in the 1990s. The Oslo Accords offered a two-state solution. Subscribe now, because this isn't just history. This is the present bleeding through the past. And the war that began in 1948? It still shapes our world today.